Let us move on to the fifth session. The title of this session is Putting Back Broken Pieces, written by Anukrti Upadhyay ji, and she'll be in conversation with Dr. Seema Raizada ji. मैं चाहूंगा हम इन दोनों हस्तियों का स्वागत करें मंच पे जोरदार तालियों के साथ. Anukrti Upadhyay ji in conversation with Dr. Seema Raizada ji. I would request all of you to be seated. आराम से बैठे रहें. We have Anukriti ji with us. Yes, we have, and we also have Dr. Seema Raizada with us. मैं चाहूँगा मंच पे वो आए और हम तालियों से ही उनका स्वागत करें. Anukriti ji has a postgraduate degree in management and literature and a graduate degree in law. She writes fiction and poetry in both English and Hindi. Her writings have appeared in Scroll.in, Kitab.sg, the Bombay Review and the Bangalore Review, the Bilingual Window and several other Hindi publications. She has worked for global investment banks, UBS, and in senior positions, and now works with the Wildlife Conservation Trust. Her book, Putting Back the Broken Pieces Together, talks about how everything happens for a reason. It's your choice on how to make things work for you. As the discussant for this esteemed session, we are elated to have Dr. Seema Raizada. She's a professor of English at Maharani Lakshmibai College, Bhopal. She's a Shakespeare scholar who has her PhD and DLED degrees on the works of the Bard and has also authored a book titled as Double Vision of Shakespeare. She's the founder of Club Literati. Club Literati was recently rated as one of the best 5 rating clubs of India. She also initiated the Shakespeare Festival in 2013 and has directed several performances at Bharat Bhavan at Tribal Museum over past few years. I would request the ladies to please unveil the conversation.
Thanks, Siddharth. Welcome to BLF, Anukriti. It's an absolute delight to be meeting you for the first time. So I understand, audience, it's going to be a very, very lively and enlightening session. And Anukriti is visiting Bhopal. This is her 3rd visit to Bhopal. And she is simply fascinated by the people and the city. So Anukriti, going by what you have brought to us today, it's a very simple thing that I'm going to do by just going back to the, the kind of creative process that a writer goes through. So a lawyer by profession, then with the global investment banks, you have worked with a couple of global investment banks. You are a wildlife enthusiast, and then you have a doctorate in literature. Now as the cliche goes, wearing so many, a woman of substance, I would like to call her, wearing so many hats. And then coming to writing. Now, what made this happen? And would you please tell us about your foray into writing, something about your creative journey?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for those warm, kind words. I think all of us as women, we play many roles. We have too many balls all the time in there. So it is something that is just a gender training. I don't think I'm special. I'm honored to be in Bhopal. This is a fascinating city. We had a very short heritage walk around the old area of Bhopal, and we were just taken in. So we'll be visiting again for sure. To your question, Seema ji, I think like most of us who were trained into reading or were avid readers, grew up in a household full of books, we had a natural inclination towards, writing, towards words, if I may put it so. My father taught at the university. He taught literature. And I had books for toys for as long as all my early memories are associated with books. So I think began writing poetry or making up poetry as a very little child. My mother tells me I have no memory, but my mother, who's here and is extremely proud of me, so please excuse if somebody there keeps clapping. So she says that I was writing poetry when I was probably 4 or 5, just barely literate. It must have been really bad poetry, but she loved it. And she always encouraged my love for words. So in large parts, my writing was because my parents loved books. Then I moved from poetry to prose, from writing largely in Hindi to now bilingually in Hindi and English. Through a transition process, I think most of us were schooled in English. And because of professional exigencies, because of the environments we worked in and had to prove ourselves in, English became almost the first language of conversation.
But you have, Anukriti, you have written 4 novels, put together in Hindi and English, and 1 collection of short stories. And your 3 novels, you call them novellas, all of them, or the 2 of them are called novellas?
They are just novels in shorter length.
So, right. So, one is was Bhauri, then Dora,
Yes.
and then you have Nina Auntie. It's a very exciting title. We'll be talking about that. And then you have a collection of short stories in Hindi, Japani Sarai. And of course, the book that would be discussed here, Kintsugi. Now, having written these many short novels, novellas, and collection of short stories, both in Hindi as well as English, and as I can make out from the titles, Dora, Bhauri, and of course, knowing about them also, they are set in Rajasthan. So, Rajasthan finds a special place in your writings. And as one can see, although Kintsugi is a novel which has several locations, but what is the connect with Rajasthan?
I was born and brought up in Rajasthan. I owe a lot of my sensibility, whether it's artistic or towards folklore or folk art. Just the beauty of desert shaped it. So that's my connection.
Yeah, because when it comes to Rajasthan, there is so much of tangible and intangible heritage, both. I mean, if you look at the tangible, you have the forts, you have the palaces, you have the deserts. When you talk of intangible assets, you have the folklore, legends. So, looking at the people then, looking at the people of Rajasthan, what comes to our mind is something, they are very simple, away from complexity most of the time. Now, what I find in this book of yours is a little, some kind of complexity in terms of people, in terms of places, in terms of relationships. Now, how did you manage to, you have lived in Rajasthan, you have seen people of Rajasthan, interacted with them. And the beauty of this book is the narrow lanes of Jaipur, the Johari Bazaar, the kind of very minute details that Anukriti has put into the portraying of the people who do the work of, jewelry in Johari Bazaar, their families, the way they stay, the buildings, the pink all over. Now, this finds a big place in this book, Kintsugi. Yet the title of the book is Japanese. It takes its name from a Japanese, practice. Now, please, how would you connect the two? Or how did you, to begin with, when you start writing the novel, how did you put the two things together, Japan and Jaipur, 2 places together?
It was not really intentional. The writing of Kintsugi began in Hakone, which is a small hot spring in Japan. It is extremely beautiful. And it is a sensory experience because Hakone is in mountains. And even May, June, months of summer are pretty cool there. And then there is a hot spring. The water comes out of the heart of the earth. It carries all the minerals that Is it okay?
Mic
Lokesh?
check.
So, with everything that Hakone
Sure.
presented to the senses, the first story or the first part of Kintsugi emerged, the story of the love between Meena and Yuri. After that, without my volition, the story moved to Jaipur by itself. It's in the writing process, as a writer and a teacher of literature, you know how stories just acquire life of their own. You start writing something and then the story runs away. You know, there's a very famous couplet by Mirza Ghalib, which I keep quoting. आते हैं गैब से मज़ामी ख़याल में गालिब सरीर खामा नवाए सरोश है, which roughly translated means, या हिंदी में बोलती हूँ, ये जो जिन मुद्दों पर या जिन चीज़ों पर कहानियाँ लिखी जाती हैं वो पता नहीं कहाँ से, गैब से, एकदम किसी विचित्र दूसरी दुनिया से आते हैं उनके विचार, और उनको जो कागज़ पे कलम चलती है उसकी एक ध्वनि होती है, ख़ास एक खसखस की एक आवाज़ होती है जब आप लिखते हैं, तो वो एक बहुत अनुभवजन्य आवाज़ है जिसको आप जब लिखते हैं तभी महसूस कर पाते हैं. तो वो एक तरह का संगीत है जिस पर तैरते हुए ये मजबून ये कहानियाँ आती हैं. So I think these stories were somewhere in the universe. They are definitely not from my experience. They are just stories plucked out of the universe, like ripe fruit.
Yeah. So अभी आपने जैसे मेंशन किया, तो मेरा प्रश्न भी ये होने वाला था अगला, क्योंकि आप दोनों हिंदी और इंग्लिश में लिखती हैं, तो मैं आपसे पूछने वाली थी ये, और अब पूछ रही हूँ कि आप जब आपके कोई ख्याल आता है या कोई एहसास आपको आता है, तो वो जब आप पेपर में कुछ लिखने वाली होती हैं तो वो किस भाषा में आता है? और क्योंकि आपने हिंदी में उतना ही अच्छा लिखा है, और जिस सलीके से और जिस सिलेक्शन से आपने अभी यहाँ कुछ लाइंस बताई, तो उसमें मुझे लगता है कि एक राइटर का लैंग्वेज से बहुत गहरा रिश्ता होता है, और वो रिश्ता एक एक शब्द जो लिखा गया होता है उसमें झलकता है. तो यही मेरा एक प्रश्न आपसे पूछने का शुरू से ही मन था कि वो भाषा, जैसे आप कुछ लिखने बैठी तो पहला शब्द या पहली लाइन आपने जो लिखी वो आप किस में लिखना चाहेंगे, हिंदी में या इंग्लिश में?
ये बहुत दिलचस्प प्रश्न है. लिखना मैं किस में चाहूँगी ये एक और है. रचना प्रक्रिया में वो किस भाषा में उपजता है वो महत्वपूर्ण है. भले ही मैं हिंदी अंग्रेज़ी किसी एक भाषा में लिखना चाहूँ, लेकिन कहानी किसी दूसरी भाषा में उपजी. जैसा आपने कहा दौरा और भौरी, वो दोनों एकदम राजस्थान की गांव ढाणी, वहाँ रेत के धोरों के बीच जो बंजारों का, जो घुमक्कड़ जातियों का जीवन है उससे बहुत जुड़ी हुई है. इनफैक्ट दौरा में एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर है और पूरी कहानी एक तरह की उसको एक तरह की रहस्य गाथा
सुपरनैचुरल काइंड
मिला जुला. और भौरी एक गडोलिया लोहार जाति की लड़की की कहानी है. तो वो कहानियाँ अंग्रेज़ी में क्यों उपजी इसका मेरे पास कोई उत्तर नहीं, लेकिन शायद गद्य की भाषा, काम के चलते जिस दुनिया में हम लोग बहुत से कारणों से रहते हैं उसके चलते गद्य की भाषा बहुत हद तक अंग्रेज़ी हो गई. और हिंदी में जब कहानियाँ लिखी तो किसी के सुझाव पर लिखी. प्रकाशक ने कहा हिंदी में कहानियाँ लिखिए, गद्य समृद्ध होना चाहिए हिंदी का, तो वो कहानियाँ लिखी गई. लेकिन अगर पूछा जाए कौन सी भाषा में ज़्यादा लिखना चाहूँगी, मैं हिंदी में लिखना चाहूँगी. अगर आप मुझे अनुमति दें तो एक बहुत छोटा 5-6 पंक्तियाँ
जरूर
मैं
जरूर
अपनी भाषा
फिर हम आज के जो हमारा को एक टाइटल दिया गया है इस सेशन के लिए उस पे हम तुरंत आते हैं.
ठीक है. तो ये बहुत 4 पंक्तियाँ हैं. मेरी भाषा इस कविता का नाम है. एक लंबी कविता है लेकिन इसकी 4 पंक्तियाँ हैं. मेरी भाषा, मेरी गुदड़ी की लाल, मेरी मिट्टी का ढेल, मेरी लकड़ी नून तेल, मेरा घर छप्पर छावनी, सिराहना पैताना, पोतड़े चुनरी कफन, मेरी दुखती रग मेरी भाषा. मैं तुम्हारी सौंधी सांवली छाह में बैठ लोहे के चने चाबना चाहती हूँ. तुम्हें अपनी कंटीली कमज़ोर बाहों में भर झकझोर देना चाहती हूँ मेरी भाषा. मैं तुम्हें जागना चाहती हूँ.
That's so beautiful. बहुत ही सुंदर, बहुत ही सुंदर. एक इसी से जुड़ी हुई बात कह के मैं आगे बढ़ूंगी, राधा पूछ के, कि जब हम आप दोनों भाषा में लिखती हैं तो क्या आपकी भाषा का चुनाव आपके चरित्र, किताबों में जो चरित्र होते हैं उनका भी चुनाव का एक कारण बनता है? Would you like to choose, I mean, if it comes to, creating characters, so would your characters be different? The language, the medium would decide the characters, who your character is going to be in the novel?
It's a challenging question to answer because writing in many ways is an organic process. Things appear in a crystallized form, but there is a process going on. So if sometimes I try to craft a character and then I fail because the character chooses actually the language. The character has a language and it speaks in that language. He or she speaks in that language. If I force a choice, I feel it often fails. Yet, I also feel that every time I write in English, I can exercise a restraint, a sort of detachment, a removal, is more easy. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that, in your position as a teacher of literature.
In fact, जो हमारे मैं जो हिंदी में चरित्र पढ़े हैं, जो कैरेक्टर्स होते हैं हिंदी के वर्क्स में, फिक्शन में या प्लेज में, और जो हम इंग्लिश के उसमें पढ़ते हैं, आई मीन वेस्टर्न लिटरेचर, सो देयर इज, मुझे सेंसिबिलिटीज बहुत अलग दिखती हैं. पर आज के, क्योंकि जो हम लोगों का एक ट्रेंड है, हम लोग अडेप्टेशंस में बहुत जा रहे हैं, और जैसे कि आप लोग सब उस चीज़ से, और अनुकृति आप भी उससे सहमत होंगे, कि बहुत क्लासिक टेक्स्ट, कोई भी वेस्टर्न लिटरेचर का टेक्स्ट आप उठा के देखिए, उसको आप दूसरी भाषा में किया है, तो अगर हमने उसको सेम सेटिंग में उतारा है तो वो हमें शायद उतना अपील नहीं करेगा. पर अगर हम उसकी जो भाषा की जो सेटिंग है, जो नेशन का है, जैसे एक एग्जांपल मैं आपको हैमलेट का ही दूंगी. हैमलेट इज़ अ प्रिंस ऑफ डेनमार्क, बट विशाल भारद्वाज ने हैदर में जो कैरेक्टर किया है, जो उसको कश्मीर में सेटिंग दी है, दैट्स सो कन्विंसिंग. सो वो ये बात तो ज़रूर है कि वो एक सेंसिबिलिटीज़ जो होती हैं कैरेक्टर्स की, वो बहुत मायने रखती हैं उस भाषा को. आई थिंक दे बोथ they complement each other. Well, so coming to the title of the book. Now the title also given to this session, Putting Back Broken Pieces, and the title of the book, Kintsugi, which of course is it comes, I can just go to the page where it is mentioned. It is like, it's straight away related to the cover of the book. You can see a bowl here. It's a little broken. And how is it mended? इसको जोड़ा कैसे गया है? इसको जोड़ा गया है, क्ले के बोल को जोड़ा गया है गोल्ड से. Right? Now this is a very intriguing, very interesting aspect of the whole book itself. How a broken thing is mended. A broken के बहुत मायने होते हैं. कहाँ चीज़ ब्रेक करती है? रिश्ते ब्रेक करते हैं. There's a, कुछ आपके anything like this gets broken. Breakable जो चीज़ होती है. तो वो बहुत खूबसूरती से किंसुकी में इस किताब में बताया गया है. Now I'll just read that single line from here. You know, there are characters, and just to give you a very brief outline of the book. The book is divided into 6 parts with 6 different characters, and 3 women, 3 men, right? They're titled, you know, beautifully titled. And yes, I mean, past and present, all combined, mutually, you know, they are shuffled. And there are characters where this particular idea of mending occurs. There are these characters. One is a small girl, and the other, of course, a Japanese girl. And the Japanese girl who is learning the art of jewelers in the craft of a jeweler in Jaipur. She shows to the little girl this picture, and she says, that night Leela lingered in Haruko's room. Leela is a small girl. Her eyes abstracted. Gigi, what is this? She asked, pointing at the picture of a terracotta colored bowl, deep and shaped like a cupped palm. The bowl had uneven golden lines running all over it. Haruko, she's the Japanese girl who has come to Jaipur to learn the work of a sonar. She says, that's a broken clay bowl mended with gold. Leela's eyes widened. Isn't it beautiful? I had tried my hand at the art of kintsugi in a ceramic class one semester. And that is how, I think that is the only time when there is this reference to this term kintsugi. So Anukriti, the broken, why so much is broken in the book? And how, of course, they are mended. But then what do you have to say about this very core issue in the book?
About breakages.
Yes.
I think you outlined the essence very beautifully when you said breakable things break. Everything, our human existence is full of fragile things. The things which we hold most dear, our relationships, our homes, the objects we collect during our life, the tenderness we feel towards our children. Everything is so fragile. It's always threatened. If you take a step back and think of the things that can go wrong, it is a wonder that we still survive as a race, we still survive as people, we still survive as families, as loving human beings. I think we survive because some breakage is allowable. If things don't break, they will not renew. If things don't break, we will not put effort in creating new things. Perhaps that was at the core of kintsugi, the fact that it's okay for relationships to break, for people to be damaged, for things not to go according to plans, for the salamander to be eaten by the monitor lizard.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful...
It is all permissible.
Yes. So, yeah, and that's a very interesting... I mean, it kind of it might sound as a contradiction, but clay, which is a very, inexpensive, common element, and that is mended by something expensive. So there's this contrast is also very exciting. But yes, there has to be an intention of mending things. There has to be someone who believes in mending things. Right. So thanks. And moving on to Japan. Now this book is set in Jaipur as well as some locales in Japan. Now, what is that? I asked you about your Rajasthan Connect. Now I ask you about your Japan Connect. And so beautifully you have described, descriptions which, talk about the beauty of, the natural beauty of Japan, the people of Japan, the customs, their garments, the kind of food, the restaurants, and the entire I think, a belief system. So that's very exciting. So tell us something about your Japan Connect and how have you brought, forth, connected the two together?
Japan came to me through my better half, my husband, who's also in the audience there, supporting his wife always. He works for a Japanese investment bank. And the first time I went to Japan, I was just blown away. It's such a trite term, but there is no other way to describe it. The beauty, the sheer beauty, the contradictions of modern Japan and the ancient Japan, existing cheek by jowl. So there is the Meiji Shrine, which is an old place of Shinto worship. And just outside the Meiji Shrine is Omate Sando, a place where teenagers dress like anime characters. अजीब विचित्र रंगों में बाल उनके रंगे हुए, चमकती हुई फॉइल के कपड़े पहने हुए हैं और जाने वो दूसरे किसी नक्षत्र से आए हैं या हमारी कल्पना से उपजे हैं. All I could do was just stare at them because they were so fascinating. And they were sitting against the old wall of the Meiji Shrine. Just the challenges it offered to every kind of thought process. Constant challenges. There are tiered roads. And then there is an unkempt jungle path, seemingly unkempt. Actually, every stone on that path has been strategically
So would you
placed.
like to read something from that? Telling us a little about the Japan part of it?
Sure.
Yeah?
Would you guys like to hear a bit of kintsugi
This,
from Japan?
yeah, maybe we have the same page now.
I don't know. Do you want me to read from here? This was the part
66?
where...
67?
Yeah, 68.
Oh,
Okay, 67?
Yeah, we just, no, I'm just wondering at the choice. I also
we
highlighted the same here.
Yeah, we didn't plan this. That was just sprung, but it just happens that...
Absolutely. I have the same page number.
That's very interesting. So I'll read this one passage. This is from the part of Kintsugi where there is an Indian girl from Jaipur. Her name is Meena. She's on a fellowship to Japan, and she's doing some research. And she meets a Japanese girl. Her name is Yuri. And Yuri sort of introduces her, breaks Meena's isolation because an Indian in Japan is a very homogeneous, very close culture, very old, very protective about itself. So to be from another country in a place like that can be quite isolating. And then she happens to meet Yuri, who breaks that isolation. So I'm just reading one paragraph from that part. One weekend, we rode the Marunouchi and Hanzomon lines to Senya-sama's shrine in Asakusa district. These are all places in Tokyo, in the heart of the old Asakusa district in Tokyo, populated by old theaters and geishas and sumo wrestling places. The stone torii gate of the temple and its facade, painted a vivid vermilion in the Shinto tradition and glowing like a beacon in the noonday sun, was visible as soon as we turned into the historic district. The narrow streets leading to the temple were lined on both sides with shops selling sweets and souvenirs. Crowds of tourists and devotees milled around, and the smell of incense wafted everywhere. To me, the whole effect was not unlike an Indian temple town, only cleaner and far more orderly. The temple compound was large, and despite the crowds, a place of peace. I followed Yuri's lead and poured water from a long-stemmed wooden ladle over my hands. We stood before the idol-less sanctum in silence, our heads bowed. Candles flickered in the dim interior. The high altar was flanked by vases filled with chrysanthemums, and the bells hanging from the ceiling at the entrance were muffled with red cloth looped into graceful folds. The only sounds were those of coins dropping into the wooden offering box and people softly clapping their hands twice as they bent from the waist in obeisance.
Lovely. So that's how she describes, and this is one of several points in the novel where you get to know the real essence of the life in Japan and the beauty of it. Well, Anukriti, I think it's time for the audience to pose some questions to you.
Anyone who has a question can go ahead and raise your hand.
You know, this book is about a very small girl, then girls, women who are young, of the marriageable age, then women who are quite independent, living in another country, men who fall in love with women of different countries, and they all go separate, they go their ways, and they come back together. So anything that excites you about these issues that are there in the book, you're welcome to ask the author.
Yes, the gentleman at the back, please pass on the mic to him.
हेलो मैम, पुटिंग बैक ब्रोकन पीसेस, ये टाइटल आपके लिए क्या मीन करता है? मतलब आपने ये क्यों रखा है, या फिर आप खुद इससे कैसे रिलेट करती हैं?
टाइटल तो मेरे ख्याल से BLF ने चुना, लेकिन किताब के लिए एकदम सटीक है, क्योंकि किताब टूटे हुए टुकड़ों को जोड़ने के विषय में ही है. कैसे जहाँ जहाँ भी चोट लगी है या दबाव पड़ा है या किसी कारण से विच्छेद हुए हैं, उन जगहों को की कैसे मरम्मत की जाए, कैसे खुद को दोबारा जोड़ा जाए.
So actually the women there portrayed, they emerge as a stronger lot. I would like to add to this. और जो जिंदगी में जितने भी breakages होते हैं, उनको बहुत अच्छे से समेटा गया है. But then they have their own complexities. It's not as simple. And a book, and I would like to add, Anukriti, and this is what I noticed. बहुत एक simple से एक narration के साथ उसकी complexity बढ़ती है. So this is what I like about the book also. Any other question? I think we can take one more question.
Yes. जो सवाल पूछे खुद को इंट्रोड्यूस भी करें.
मैम, मैं अभिषेक सिंह हूँ. मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ कि जो ये जोड़ने का प्रतीक चुना है कि मिट्टी का पात्र है और उसे सोने से जोड़ा है, तो इस प्रतीक का क्या निहितार्थ है, क्या कहता है प्रतीक?
मिट्टी एक सर्वव्यापी एलिमेंट है, हर जगह है. हम कबीर ने कहा मिट्टी का एक कुम्हार से तू क्या रूंदे मोए. तो जो मिट्टी है वो बहुत शक्तिशाली है, लेकिन और वो हर जगह है. जो चीज़ मिट्टी की बनी है वो बोलता रहे तो टूट कर मिट्टी हो गई, लेकिन वो वाकई टूट के मिट्टी नहीं होती है. मिट्टी की शक्ति हर चीज़ में है. उसका पात्र बन गया, अगर वो टूट गया तो दूसरा पात्र बन जाएगा. लेकिन जो आधुनिक संदर्भ है उसमें टूटी चीज़ों को जोड़ना, कंजर्वेशन, उनको वापस उनको पुनर्नवा करना, रिवाइव करना, उस संदर्भ से कहानी में मानवीय रिश्तों के जुड़ाव, अलगाव, उनके विषय में बात की गई है.
And one more thing before we come to the end. Let me congratulate Anukriti, I should have done that before, on getting a prize for this cover. There is, the Oxford Prize that the book won for this cover, right? And of course, she's the winner of the Sushila Devi Award. And congratulations for both, Anukriti.
Thank you very much. You've been so kind, and thank you. I really appreciate your warm words.
If there is a quick question, we can go ahead with it. Yes. Please pass on the mic to gentleman. Last question, please be precise.
Hello. Madam, my name is Rajesh Kumar Dubey. I would like to ask you a question about relationship. When the relationship between the people of different country comes, initially only love is predominant, but later on their own personality, their ego, their cultural value clashes. So how to overcome that type of situation, or they go back to their original roots? What is your opinion on that, madam?
I can only offer a personal opinion because the writers have no opinion. We just tell stories. I completely agree with you. Different cultures coming together is very challenging. But then everything is challenging. We originated in the forest. We are living in these cities. That's challenging. We lived through the pandemic times. Very challenging. We are speaking in a language which is not our own. It's a learned language. That's challenging. We do challenging things because it enriches life.
But then the clashes of people try to go back to the original root.
I think that depends on the people. Everybody is so unique. Every relationship is so unique. There is not one simple formula for everything.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anukriti ji and Seema ji. मैं चाहूँगा जोरदार तालियों से हम इस बेहतरीन सेशन का अभिनंदन करें. And I would now like to invite the director of the Bhopal Literature and Art Festival, Raghav Chandra ji, to please come forward. A mug to go along for our discussant. Thank you so much, Seema ji, for carrying out a beautiful discussion.